We get reports from AFSC that in Los Angeles there's a revived religious coalition against the war in the Gulf, calling for a massive interfaith gathering tomorrow to protest the bombing. St. Louis is organizing. They have a Just Peace coalition calling for nationwide actions on the 27th, next Friday, to mark the 7th anniversary of the end of the Gulf War. They have been holding daily press briefings since Monday on the situation in Iraq, with information directly from Voices in the Wilderness, a team of folks who've been going to Iraq to document the effect of the sanctions and bringing back that information in video and presentations here. Is there anyone here from Voices in the Wilderness? We owe them a big hand, if there's anyone here. There are organizing going on throughout all the peace movement. Pax Christi is sponsoring a Washington, D.C. National Day of Prayer, Fasting, and Witness on Ash Wednesday, the 25th. It's been mentioned that there are bishops who've been fasting for over a month. Bishop Gumbleton, Bishop Rosasa, and Bishop Orton Welder. And those bishops have released a statement to President Clinton calling for an end to the embargo. Boston area religious leaders, including Cardinal Bernard Shaw, released a statement calling for a diplomatic solution just on Thursday, saying that talk of war is premature. We got to quit. I just wanted to mention one last thing, that there are nuclear dimensions to this war, and that Abolition 2000 Caucus is busy organizing to draw attention to that, and that the lobbying efforts that Sheila Foreman told me I have to talk about, which I'm going to briefly...
No. You've got to have discipline for the other speakers. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, and I really hate being so heavy.
The lobbying workshop.
But we have a really serious and long agenda, a lot of speakers, and I think we gave Kathy and Alex an impossible job, and kind of an introduction to the news that we haven't been reading. You know, this is the alternative news report, and I know of a lot of things that are going on that weren't there as well. So thank you, and I'm sorry. The next speaker is someone who is well known to people who have been involved in the civil rights movement, been involved in the anti-war movement in Vietnam. Anyone who's been in a decent history course in this country. I don't think I need to say much more than to introduce Howard Zinn. Thank you.
Well, that was the most that was the most encouraging weather report I've heard in a long time.
Louder.
Oh,
This should do it.
how's this? Better? Can you hear me back there? Well, I'll know when my time is up. Well, every political issue is a moral issue. And the moral issue in the present crisis, I think, can be stated very simply. And that is that if we bomb Iraq, we will, with certainty, kill large numbers of people, without any certainty that the result of that will be anything beneficial for Iraq, for the region, for the world, or for people in the United States. Amen. And the focus has been on Saddam Hussein. Focus is a mild word. There's been a hysteria built around that one figure of Saddam Hussein. Historically, we have seen the same kind of hysteria promulgated by the leaders of the country from time to time, depending on historical period, against one or another enemy. The assumption being, if you just get rid of this enemy, everything will be all right. And so in 1898, the focus was on Spain in Cuba. And we were going to liberate Cuba from Spain. And we did. We liberated Cuba from Spain. We also liberated it from the Cubans. And replaced Spain as the oppressor of Cuba. In World War I, the focus was on the Kaiser. Kaiser Wilhelm. You remember him. If we only get rid of the Kaiser Wilhelm, well, this is the war to end all wars. That was one of the great statements of the 20th century. And in our time, we've seen this again and again, the demonization of people. If we only get rid of communism, if we get rid of Ho Chi Minh, if we don't get rid of communism, San Francisco will be in danger. Again and again we've seen demonization, hysteria, concentration, and that's what we're seeing now with Saddam Hussein, as if he is the sole source of evil in the world. It requires a kind of amnesia. It requires a kind of national Alzheimer's disease to forget history. And if you forget history, it's as if you were born yesterday. And if you were born yesterday, then you can believe whatever our national political leaders tell us because we have no way of checking up on it. But with a little bit of history, suddenly what is presented to us is seen in a larger context, and in a broader perspective. And when we enlarge our context, we ask not only about Saddam Hussein, we not only ask to look at him, we ask to look at ourselves, to examine the United States government, to examine the history of the behavior of the United States and the world. Honesty requires it. Democracy requires it. Because we don't have democracy unless the citizens of this country can examine what our national policies are and subject that policy to the harshest of criticism to make sure that our government is obeying the principles of the Declaration of Independence, to make sure that our government is obeying international law, to make sure that our government is fulfilling the most important principles of our society. And so, in that spirit, in the spirit of democracy, in the spirit of honesty, we have to examine not just Saddam Hussein, but examine ourselves. Because, yes, Saddam Hussein has treated with great cruelty and viciousness the people of Iraq. But we'd have to say this, that in that, the United States has far exceeded him. Because the United States in the devastation of the war, in what followed after the war, in the embargo, in the killing of at least 1 million people in the wake of the war, the United States has visited a devastation on Iraq, on its women, on its children, on its ordinary citizens, even beyond what Saddam Hussein was able to do. Saddam Hussein has flouted international law. Yes, he's violated a resolution of the United Nations. And leaders keep talking about that as if he is the first person who has violated a resolution of the United Nations. You see. United Nations resolutions have been violated again and again. First of all, we should say that the basic principle of the United Nations, the basic principle of the UN Charter, that is, that nations shall not go to war against other nations, that if a nation does go to war, it will be at the behest of the United Nations and not unilaterally. That has been ignored again and again by the United States. The other thing that ought to be said is that various UN resolutions have been passed over the years which have been ignored, and the United States has done nothing about it. I mean, Resolution 242 of the United Nations calling on Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories, not followed through, ignored. Did the United States then bomb Israel in order to persuade Israel to obey the dictates of Resolution 242? When Indonesia went into East Timor in a massive invasion in 1975 and massacred hundreds of thousands of people in East Timor, the UN Security Council unanimously passed a resolution calling on Indonesia to withdraw from East Timor. Indonesia did not withdraw. Did the United States then bomb Indonesia in order to persuade it to obey the UN resolution? No, Indonesia was an ally of ours. Not only that, the United States was supplying military arms to Indonesia and continued to supply military arms to Indonesia. More and more resolutions against Turkey occupying northern Cyprus, resolutions against Israel occupying southern Lebanon, ignored. The United States did not begin bombing in order to enforce those resolutions. So there's an enormous hypocrisy involved here in all this emphasis on, well, he is flouting international law. And yes, Saddam Hussein may possess weapons of mass destruction. It's something very odd about the United States possessing how many? 6,000 at least nuclear weapons, hydrogen bombs. The United States, the greatest possessor of weapons of mass destruction in the world, not open to international inspection. The United States and other countries with weapons of mass destruction, Turkey with weapons of mass destruction, Indonesia with weapons of mass destruction, Saudi Arabia supplied with weapons of mass destruction by the United States, weapons of mass destruction all over the world supplied by the United States. And of course weapons were supplied to Iraq before 1990 by the United States. Yes. That should be remembered too. Madeleine Albright had said, well, yes, but Saddam Hussein is a repeat offender. I like that. A repeat offender. If we had to produce in court the criminal record of the United States in the world, it would be a very long record. Because the United States... this should not be forgotten when we talk about repeat offenders. The United States killed several million people in Southeast Asia. We shouldn't forget that. The United States invaded Panama. The United States, we talk about demonizing, remember, Noriega. If we got rid of Noriega, the drug trade would be over. The drug trade is flourishing in Panama, you see. The United States invaded again and again. The United States sent troops into Lebanon. The United States in 1965 sent troops into the Dominican Republic. The United States has sent troops into other countries again and again. The United States flouted international law in Nicaragua when the World Court declared that the United States had violated international law. The United States is probably the number one repeat offender in the world. There is no clear and present danger. Whatever Saddam Hussein possesses, we don't know what he possesses. A Marine general pointed this out, a retired Marine general pointed out, possession itself does not warrant an attack. If possession itself warranted an attack, then some mythical superpower would be right in attacking the United States for its possession of nuclear weapons. There's no clear and present danger from Iraq. Right now, the clear and present danger is from the United States of America. That bridge to the 21st century, which was promised to us by Clinton, is going to be blown up by the bombs dropped on Iraq. That promise of a new future, of a new United States, of a prosperous country, of a peaceful country, that is going to be blown up by those bombs. I just want to say one more thing, and that is that in that discussion in Columbus, Ohio, when Madeleine Albright and when the others were faced with questions that they could not answer, they resorted to slogans: national security, national interest. And at one point, Madeleine Albright said, to great applause, because she knew this would work, "This is the greatest country in the world." I said, well, greatness does not consist in military weapons. Greatness does not consist in military power. When the United States uses its weapons of mass destruction against other countries, it is not the greatest country in the world. And if it is going to become a great country, and I'm not talking about the greatest, because let's stop thinking about number one, number two, number three. Let's just take our moderate place among the other nations in the world. This is not the Olympic Games, you see. If we're going to be a great nation, then we have to show our moral greatness. We have to become a peaceful nation. We have to begin to use the enormous resources we have to solve the human problems that we have in this country. Thank you.
Okay, I want to ask people standing over here on the left and people in the aisles to please get into seats to make it easy with fire lanes, and one way of kind of showing respect for everyone else who's here. I have to say that listening to Howard and having been in Japan as much as I have, where they talk about national treasures, you know, I think we are so fortunate to have Howard as one of our national treasures. I then quickly want to move to introduce Elaine Hagopian. Elaine is a truly remarkable person who I hope some historians are following as well. Not only for the analysis that she's been doing for years, the news and information that she brings us, but also in her work in work with the Arab American community, or the American Arab community, in helping to organize the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. Before that, the Association of Arab American University Graduates. Part of the process of building American voices, building equality and respect for all people in this country. And Elaine, it's a wonderful pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say that the last time I was with Howard Zinn on the same program, and it's always an honor and a pleasure for me, it was in some small private school, I can't even remember which one, and it was over the Gulf War. And I always pleased and happy to see Professor Zinn. I was going to also show you some maps of the Middle East, but I think time pressures are going to be such that I won't use they were overheads. All I can say is that that map has high pressure everywhere. And I would like to try to present some sort of analysis and it will be in 3 parts. I can't help it, I'm an academic. I may overcome that one of these days. The 3 parts are, 1, what are U.S. policy goals in the Middle East, and in some sort of a historical context that will take me about 5 minutes and get up to the contemporary expression. The second part will be Saddam Hussein's motivation in the present crisis, and the third will be an attempt to understand U.S. motivation in the present crisis and the likely outcome of the bombings. I'm not sure I can understand U.S. motivations. They always seem so irrational. In any case, 2 days ago I was at a lecture at Harvard and the Middle East Center there, and former Consul General Edward Abington, who was former Consul General in Jerusalem, I asked him to spell out what American goals are in the Middle East. And he said, and there are things that we know, but he said very frankly, which most American officials don't say, he said, number 1 is the absolute security of Israel and normalization of Israel in the region, economically, culturally, politically, and that is a very important cornerstone of American policy. Second, he said, stability in the region. And I think he didn't spell it out, but what that really means is suppression of any Arab nationalist expression or popular resistance to American primacy in the area. That's what stability really means. And foremost, he said, access, which you should read control of, oil resources in the area. These are the cornerstones. Security of Israel, stability in the region, and access to oil. Now, if one, and I will try to be very, very brief on this, if one were to go back to 1916, even for 30 seconds that I have, and is reminded of a 1916 agreement between the French and the British, and the Russians were also involved, but let's just stay with the French and British. It was called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. France and Britain made an agreement after they had already promised the large Arab area to the Arabs as an independent state if they joined Britain in going against Turkey and Germany. But in 1916, they made an agreement as to how the Ottoman Empire would be split up after World War I. Briefly, the way they would split it up is the following at that time. Number 1, France would have basically Lebanon and Syria and a piece of Turkey. This would be the outer western rim, if you have a picture of the map in your mind. It would also extend into an area, into where the Kurdish area of northern Iraq is, up to Mosul. Great Britain would have the southern area from southern Syria and what then became Jordan, and swing right over into what is Iraq, and really occupy that eastern region. So if you looked at that map, it was really to have Great Britain and France sort of surround the area, and in the middle, where there was mostly desert area, they were thinking of having independent Arab states that they would basically administer and direct, and they would be the less populated so that the local people could administer it, but
I'm Mark Berzonsky, your host for this weekly program, Mideast Realities, and thank you for watching. If you too are concerned about the situation in today's Middle East and about U.S. policies toward that crucial region of the world, and if you'd like to meet like-minded persons, why don't you come to one of our weekly social meetings? I'll be there, of course. Just give us a call for details.